Hello everyone, and welcome to today's little talk about bone strength. Bone strength is something that's relevant to all of us, men and women, as we age. And yes, it is true that ladies are particularly prone to having osteoporosis. This is mainly linked to the fact that after the menopause, the level of estrogen in our body drops massively, and therefore, as estrogen is associated with encouraging strong bones, women do suffer a lot more. But it's not just a lady-specific problem, because men can also have fractures in their bones as they age. And another hormone, the stress hormone cortisol, plays a role as well, and that's relevant for both sexes. Cortisol is detrimental to bone strength, and therefore it makes sense to have a less stressed, calmer, happier lifestyle. It's good for us overall, it's great for our bones as well. So incorporate activities that reduce stress and make you happier with a sense of greater well-being, and your bones will definitely benefit. Now we're going to think about what we can do for our bones in terms of beneficial movement. And there's quite a lot of things we can do at any age. So if you think about a cell or cells called osteoblasts, they build bone strength. They create new bone growth. And as with everything in the body, what we don't use, we lose. So if the body realizes that we are less active, not doing as many things, the body is not going to create new bone growth, because the body wants to be as efficient as possible. Therefore, if we keep moving and we keep getting that sense of recoil through our feet as we walk, the body is going to continue being aware of the need to build you stronger bones, stimulate those wonderful osteoblasts. So walking as much as possible is really important at any age. And if you can tolerate a little bit of running and a bit of jumping, as long as that's okay for your knees, feet and hips, that's amazing. Otherwise, walking is a fantastic whole body workout. But it's not just about walking. It's also about alignment. When I say alignment, I don't necessarily mean yanking ourselves into some kind of forced chest up, head forward and kind of chin lifted position. This is called the military stance, and it creates tension in between the shoulder blades. It can create tension in the lower back. So forcing yourself into some kind of position that we might think is beneficial is not always so. Our alignment needs to follow certain rules, and you can measure and assess your own alignment by getting yourself a plumb line. If you drop that plumb line, standing sideways looking in the mirror, if you drop that plumb line from the ear down towards your outside ankle bone, that plumb line should pass through the ear, the center of the shoulder, the center of the hip, down to the middle of the knee, to the outside ankle bone. And what we might find is that we're standing either with the hips swayed forwards, or maybe with the tail tucked under and slouching perhaps, or maybe not necessarily slouching. These things make a difference. If we are not in optimal alignment, even as we're walking around, as we do, that impact, recoil from the ground up, is not going to go straight up our bones. It will be missing the target. If we are rounded in the spine, we can be in a vicious circle. So we are weakening as our muscles get stretched, and as we're not receiving the impact from the ground up that goes upwards through our skeleton, we are also not receiving the input from the bones. Our bones can get weaker, which further exacerbates the rounded posture. So with this vicious cycle, it makes sense to work as much as possible to prevent that happening in the first place. And a way to prevent that is really engaging in activities that create that tall body. So there's a whole bunch of things you can do outside of walking. If you don't have time to walk a kilometer or a mile. We can stand and bounce into the heels. That creates impact through our bones. We can just spend a few minutes doing that each day, several times a day. That's going to be a lot better than absolutely nothing whatsoever. And you can start having a sense of where the body is in space as you're gently bouncing. It does not need to be a hard bounce. It's about gently stimulating those wonderful osteoblasts to wake up and build bones. Lots of other things you can do. If you've got a couple of implements, we can turn to those in a second. But even building leg strength, for example, through squatting. So squatting, I like to teach squatting in a multitude of ways. One way I teach it sometimes, quite often in fact, is to sit back as if there's an imaginary chair behind you, and then straighten up by pressing into the heels more. So a lot of people by default squat something like this, with massively shifting knees forwards, and whilst this is great for ankle mobility, it does not necessarily load the thighs and the buttocks quite so much. The other thing we've got to watch is not being rounded in the spine or chest lifting, chest thrusting. So there's a whole bunch of things to consider with your squatting. So the way I like to teach it is with the spine long, sitting back, and weight bearing through the feet, but make sure you are not lifting the toes up like so. So you need to have your feet relaxed on the floor. Now we can modify the squat and make it even more loaded on one leg by favoring one side. So we're going to come into a squat, sitting back into it, and then we're going to press more weight into the right side. You're going to kickstand your left toes on the floor, and then as we get stronger, we might be able to lift that left foot off the ground and balance on the right side. And then we repeat that on the left. So squatting, connecting into the left foot, lightening the right, tiptoeing, and then maybe for some of us lifting that foot off the floor and seeing whether you're more balanced one side than the other. And that really wakes up the legs, that really loads up the bones. So squatting is a great way to build leg strength. If you've got certain things like maybe a resistance band or a loop band, I like to use a short loop like this. We can challenge our bones to become more strong by using a wall or a chair to hold on to, standing sideways on with your loop band around the ankles, and you're balancing on a foot that's closer to the wall, and then you're taking the other leg out to the side, feeling that loading in your tissues of the moving leg whilst you're building stability in your supporting leg. And then we can reverse that as well. So that's a good way of creating loading into your legs. There's a whole bunch of those things. With the arms, we can use hand weights. We can even use shopping bags if you haven't got weights handy. But just make sure the weights are not excessive. Ideally, you've got something which is handy and not too big. So these are 1 kilo weights. I also have kilo weights. Lots of other people I work with use half kilo weights. You need to see what works for you best. When you've got those weights, just a simple action of lifting those weights in various directions, as long as it's okay for your shoulders and your neck. I'm not able to provide you specific medical advice on this, but just make sure it does not aggravate your neck and your shoulders. So work within your tolerance level. Lifting the weights is a great way of doing that. You can also do loaded squats. Same thing as we did before. You squat and then you straighten up to make your squats even more kind of effective. I like doing this one, which happens in a squat-like position. So I'm getting the people who come into my sessions to come into a squat, stay in the squat, get the elbows into the sides of the body, and then imagine you are in a skiing competition and you're pushing off with your ski sticks and straightening the arms, and that creates a lot of strengthening and loading for the upper arm at the back, because we tend to be really strong in a kind of the bicep curl position. This does the opposite, which extends the arm backwards and works the back of the arm. So these things can be really wonderful as well. Finally, if you've got a stretchy band or even one of these loop bands, or to be honest, I've worked during lockdown with people on Zoom, they had none of that. Somebody used an old pair of tights. So be creative. Use whatever you've got handy before you invest when you need to. We would come into a squat and then imagine you've got your opponent and you engage in a little boxing match. You're going to punch forwards and stretch your band. One arm is remaining into your side with the elbow bent, and then you're throwing punches forwards. And that not only builds strength on your arms, also gets your heart rate up a bit, gets you breathing more widely. Breathing is an amazing way to load the rib cage bones, and that actually prevents us from getting osteoporosis in the rib cage. You can see all of these actions, including your day-to-day breathing, creates bone strength and creates that loading through the body, which is so important to maintain our body and skeleton strong. I hope you found this useful. Let me know if you've got any questions. I'm always happy to chat to people. And do please follow me on social media. My Facebook account is Move Beyond UK. Same for Instagram, Move Beyond UK. My name is Kay Woodgate. It was lovely speaking to you today, and I hope you found it beneficial. Have a wonderful rest of your day.